Brenda Louise Matissen was born on August 31, 1972. She spent part of her early life in Ocala, Florida, but by her late 40s, she had built her life in Arlington, Texas. She was a single mother to her daughter, and she owned Altex Coring and Sawing, a concrete cutting company she had run since 2004. This wasn't a small operation. It brought in millions annually. To those around her, she was hardworking, dependable, and determined. But her personal life was complicated. Brenda had a daughter with Tony Cook. They were never married, and their custody battle dragged on for years. Tony eventually won custody. Around 2020, Brenda was living with her boyfriend, Xavier Hernandez Hankins. That relationship, according to reports, was volatile, abusive. In 2019, Brenda even posted a photo online calling a man a lying, cheating, abusive, mean jerk. Many believe it was Xavier she was referring to, though it's never been officially confirmed. On April 8, 2020, Brenda was last seen at her Arlington shop on Spring Miller Court. Her truck was in a repair shop that day, and when she vanished, her purse, company phone, and other personal belongings were gone too. That same day, Xavier told her employees to go home and stopped others from entering the shop. He allegedly left with Brenda, and no one ever saw her again. At first, Xavier texted her family, but when they arrived in Texas that July to search for her, his communication abruptly stopped. He never joined their search, and he never gave them access to her home. The days that followed revealed chilling details. Expensive equipment and vehicles disappeared from her business. At her home, the entire security system had been stripped, cameras ripped out, backup drives gone, a heavy safe missing. According to her sister, blood was found on the floor. Witnesses also claimed they saw 4 or 5 men leaving Brenda's home after she vanished. These details have never been verified by law enforcement. And still, police never conducted a full search of her house or her business. Her employees, left unpaid, scattered to find new jobs. There's another wrinkle. In late 2019, Brenda had been arrested during a traffic stop and charged with methamphetamine possession. It's never been clear whether the drugs were actually hers or just inside the vehicle. Some say she may have had a court date pending when she went missing, though no public records confirm it. In October 2020, Tony Cook moved into Brenda's former home with their daughter. Her family insists Brenda never would have wanted that she and Tony never got along. Then, just a month later, tragedy struck again. Around 1 a.m. on November 5, 2020, police responded to West Illinois Avenue in Oak Cliff. Xavier had been shot in the head as he walked alongside the road. He later died at the hospital. A couple, Ruby Esparza and Basilio Tovar, who were at the bar with Xavier earlier, were arrested at first, but quickly cleared. Soon after, local bar owner Bernardino Delgado Jr. was charged. As of August 2025, he awaits trial. With Xavier's death, another possible lead in Brenda's disappearance was gone. Meanwhile, Altex collapsed. Just 5 days after Brenda vanished, the company shut down. The property is now listed under a different name, Precision Underground Boring, but it looks abandoned. The company's website and online presence vanished, just like Brenda. She had pierced ears and a pierced navel, breast implants, and 2 small moles near her lip. At the time, her hair was dyed red, though she sometimes wore it blonde, and she may have worn glasses or contacts. Her family has fought for answers for years. They even hired a private investigator who later dropped the case. Despite the massive theft of property, vehicles, and equipment, no breakthroughs have been made. Many believe the scale of the theft points to multiple people and someone with inside knowledge, and that raises questions. In 2020, many security systems had cloud backups, so who had the kind of access and the knowledge to wipe her system completely? How could so many vehicles and heavy equipment disappear without a trace? And then her finances. Brenda drove an 18-year-old Chevy Avalanche and paid to replace the transmission instead of buying a new truck. Could that have been a sign of financial strain or just loyalty to a vehicle she loved? And the motive? Was Brenda targeted for money or silenced because of her legal trouble? Or was it something much more personal? Whatever the truth, Brenda Matissen vanished without a trace, and her family is still waiting. If you have any information about the disappearance of Brenda Louise Matissen, please contact Arlington Police at 817-459-5316. Isaac Payton Ikey Sweat was born on July 19, 1944, in Port Arthur, Texas, to Dottie and Ruby Sweat. He grew up surrounded by music. His father and uncles played in bands like the Fruit Jar Drinkers and the Firestone Boys, groups that would gather at local hoedowns, where a fiddle and a guitar could turn a backwoods gathering into a night of dancing. Ikey's father was a professional musician, traveling from hall to hall, though never more than 100 miles from home. By 13, Ikey had picked up the banjo, soon after the guitar. He joined high school rock bands, reading music when he had to, but mostly playing by ear. One of his early groups, the Continentals, paid him just $8 a night. They didn't last long. After graduation, he tried pre-med at Lamar University with a minor in music. But late-night gigs and long school days don't mix well. Within months, he dropped out to chase music full-time. Ikey crossed paths with a rising blues man, Johnny Winter. They'd known of each other from school bands, and soon Ikey was playing bass in Winter's group. First the Crystaliers, then the Coastaliers. Their song, Eternally, hit #1 regionally, and the band toured for 3 years, stretching as far as Georgia. Later, Ikey played bass on Winter's Columbia album, White, Hot, and Blue, which became a national success. But Ikey's style never sat still. He dabbled in psychedelic rock before circling back to the genre he loved most, country. He liked to say he was an outlaw before outlaw country was cool, wearing a beard when Willie Nelson was still clean-cut in Nashville. By the early 80s, Ikey had his own band, and then the song that defined him. In 1980, he recorded a vocal version of Cotton Eye Joe. It caught fire. Suddenly, every honky-tonk in Texas was packed with people dancing to Ikey's version. The single held the country charts for over 30 weeks, second only to Tammy Wynette's Stand By Your Man. Some say it even sparked the line dancing craze that swept America. But for all its success, Ikey never saw the fortune he deserved. He'd recorded it for a flat fee, no royalties. Only when he recut it in 1981 did he finally see a royalty check. Frustration followed. Local radio stations shifted to national playlist, leaving no room for regional voices. He kept recording, but none gained traction. He opened a nightclub that failed, went through managers who didn't help, watched as stars like George Strait and Clint Black rose to the top, while he remained stuck in Houston dance halls. The weight took its toll. Ikey even checked himself into a hospital for exhaustion and depression. His marriage to Sharon Sweat was unraveling. In the spring of 1990, he filed for divorce, though Sharon never received the papers. Then came June 23, 1990. A gunshot rang out in the garage. Police found Ikey dead from a contact wound to the head. A .25 caliber pistol, sunglasses, and car keys were on the floor near his left hand. But Ikey was right-handed, and there was no gunpowder on his hands. Suspicion quickly fell on Sharon. She was indicted for murder, and the case nearly went to trial in 1992. Experts were prepared to argue both sides, suicide or murder. In the end, charges were dropped for lack of evidence. Sharon was never convicted. Later, the house where Ikey died burned in a fire she was linked to, allegedly set for insurance money. Friends and family have never stopped believing she got away with murder. Isaac Payton Sweat's story is complicated. He played with legends, poured himself into music, and gave the world one of its most iconic country dance songs. In 1999, he was inducted into the Gulf Coast Music Hall of Fame in Port Arthur. Even now, if you dig up his records, you'll hear more than a one-hit wonder, a musician who helped fuel a movement, even if the spotlight never stayed on him for long. On September 17, 2016, a man named Tim Waltrip was mowing his family's pasture about 7 miles north of Madisonville, Texas, right off Interstate 45. Tim and his son-in-law, Stephen, had only been cutting for a short while when the tractor struck something near the fence. The impact flipped a black suitcase. At first, Tim thought it was just debris tossed from the highway. He'd found plenty of things over the years that had bounced into the pasture. He stepped down from the tractor to check, hoping there might be an ID tag inside. When he unzipped the suitcase, a faint odor escaped, nothing unusual for an old bag left outdoors. Inside were a shawl and a few odds and ends, but then he noticed a plastic bag. When he lifted it, the smell grew stronger. Peeking inside, he froze. What he thought might have been a mouse was, in fact, a small skull with hair still attached. In shock, he backed away. Stephen, seeing Tim had stopped the tractor, came over. Tim asked him to look, and Stephen confirmed it. Yes, it was a skull. Together they called police. Inside the suitcase were 3 white garbage bags. Wrapped within were the skeletal remains of a little girl. She had thick, dark hair falling past her shoulders, and she was dressed in a pink outfit decorated with butterflies and the words, "Follow your dreams." She wore a size 4 diaper. Most haunting of all, she had a surgically implanted feeding tube, also known as a Mickey button. This was a child who had lived with serious medical needs, someone who required daily medical care, and yet she had been stuffed in a suitcase and tossed out like trash. Authorities determined she'd been deceased for several months before being found. She was believed to be between 2 and 6 years old, likely Hispanic, though DNA revealed Native American ancestry as well. Her remains showed no signs of trauma, but her death was ruled a homicide. Investigators focused on the feeding tube. It measured 1.2 centimeters across and carried the code AA4069F02. If it could be traced, it might lead to her doctors, maybe even her name. But the number linked only to a bulk lot, another lead gone cold. She became known only as Madisonville Jane Doe, or Baby Madison. In 2019, investigators began working with Identifinders International on forensic genealogy. Her DNA revealed strong ancestral ties to El Salvador, with additional connections to Nuevo Leon, Mexico, and the American Southwest. Isotope and pollen testing later suggested she may have lived in southern Arizona, New Mexico, or northern Mexico, most likely southern Arizona. For years, experts thought she suffered from micronathia, a condition where the lower jaw grows smaller than normal. Flyers were distributed to clinics that treat the condition, hoping someone would recognize her. But in 2024, new analysis determined she did not have micronathia after all, and that her feeding tube had been required for a different syndrome. A new facial reconstruction was created, and updated flyers, including Spanish translations, were released. There were moments of hope. A woman in Arizona believed the child might be her estranged granddaughter, but DNA ruled her out. To this day, her closest genetic matches remain in El Salvador, and genealogists continue urging families with roots there to upload DNA to GEDmatch or Family Tree DNA to help identify her. For Sheriff Travis Neely, who led the investigation in Madison County, this case was one of the hardest he ever faced. In nearly a decade as sheriff, he had never seen a murder in his rural county until this one. Before retiring, he promised to do everything possible to give the little girl her name back. Now, nearly a decade later, the mystery remains. A pink dress, a feeding tube, a suitcase in the grass along a Texas highway, and still no name. If you have any information that could help identify the Madisonville Jane Doe, please call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST. Lina Sardar Khil was born on February 20th, 2018. She came into the world in Afghanistan, the daughter of Zarmina and Riaz, and the big sister to 2 little brothers. Her father had worked alongside the U.S. military, and in 2019, the family came to America on a special visa, hoping for peace and safety. They settled in San Antonio, Texas, at the Villa del Cabo Apartments, a community where Afghan families were starting over. Riaz began working as a truck driver, while Lina thrived as a happy, playful 3-year-old who was deeply loved. On the evening of December 20th, 2021, Lina's mother brought her and her younger brother down to the playground right outside their apartment building on Fredericksburg Road. Other children were there too, running and laughing. Lina wore a red dress, a black jacket, and black shoes. She had been dressed for a family gathering planned later that evening. Around 5 to 6 p.m., her mother briefly stepped away. When she returned, Lina was gone. The children nearby didn't know where she'd gone either. Some witnesses thought they saw her walking toward the parking lot. At 7:15 p.m., police were called. Within hours, search dogs, officers, and federal agents were combing the area. Dogs traced her scent to the parking lot, where it vanished. Dive teams searched nearby creeks, grassy fields, and wooded patches. Officers said they knocked on every door in the complex and questioned everyone who came and went. Neighbors, however, have said not all units were contacted. Despite the effort, no trace of Lina was found. An Amber Alert was issued, and the FBI soon joined the case. For her family, the nightmare only deepened. Conspiracy theories and accusations began circulating online. Some claimed, without evidence, that Lina had been sold as a child bride. The family was stalked and harassed, even threatened. Authorities have consistently said there's no proof to support those claims, but the damage left the family even more isolated. Over time, the search widened. Within the first 2 months, investigators covered more than 28 miles of terrain. Still, nothing. By April 2023, Lina's father voluntarily took an FBI polygraph test to help clear his name. In 2023, a forensic artist released an age-progressed sketch of Lina. A year later, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children followed with their own image of what she might look like at age 6. Rewards for Lina's safe return have climbed to $280,000, yet every lead seems to dead end. A search of a wooded patch near Interstate 10 in February 2024 came up empty. Another tip later that year led police to dig in a field less than a mile from where she vanished. Again, nothing. Some believe it was a random abduction, a crime of opportunity. Others think it may have been targeted, perhaps tied to her father's work with the U.S. military. Human trafficking has also been raised as a possibility. Police have publicly said they don't believe Lina simply wandered off. Too much ground has been covered, and something would have been found by now. In the middle of this, her father, Riaz, tried to help searchers in practical ways. After repeated questions about jewelry Lina may have been wearing, he shared a photo and gave permission for it to be released. A photo taken that day shows her in the red dress and small pieces of jewelry, details that, unfortunately, weren't made public until about a month later. That evening, her family had been preparing for a gathering. Lina, dressed so sweetly, was supposed to attend with her parents and brothers, but she never made it. Today, Lina's face is still on posters, in age-progressed sketches, and in the memories of those who love her. For her parents, the pain of not knowing is overwhelming. Her father has spoken openly about his fear that people will forget about his little girl. But Lina hasn't been forgotten. Her family still waits, and investigators still ask for the public's help. If you recognize her image or know anything about her disappearance, please call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST or the San Antonio Police Department at 210-207-7273. Lisa Lee Chandler was born on March 3, 1963. By the fall of 2007, she was 44 years old, living in Wolfe City, Texas, in the same house she had called home for 2 decades. She was the mother of 2 boys, navigating a divorce and coping with the weight of ongoing struggles with her mental health. On September 23, 2007, Lisa spoke with her mother on the phone. She said she wasn't feeling well and planned to see a doctor the next morning before making the 6-hour drive to her mother's home in Starks, Louisiana. But she never made it to the appointment, and she never made it to Louisiana. That evening, around 5 p.m., Lisa was last seen at her home in the 5500 block of Highway 34 North. The following day, when her family couldn't reach her, her daughter drove over to check on her. What she found was alarming. Lisa's car was still parked in the driveway. Her dog was loose in the yard. Inside, the doors were unlocked, the windows open, and the television was still on. Lisa's belongings, her purse, glasses, and cigarettes were left behind on the table, but Lisa was gone. Authorities were called, and the Hunt County Sheriff's Office launched a search. Tracking dogs followed Lisa's scent south along Highway 34 toward Greenville for about 5 miles until the trail abruptly ended. Investigators believe she may have been picked up by a passing motorist. Ground and air searches combed more than 1,500 acres surrounding Lisa's home, but no further trace of her was found. Investigators later identified a person of interest living in Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, though that person's name has never been released. Authorities haven't ruled out foul play. It was uncharacteristic for Lisa to vanish without a word, and while some of her associates were known to have ties to drugs, investigators have never confirmed whether that played a role in her disappearance. Since that September evening, her family has lived with silence, nearly 2 decades without answers. If you have any information about what happened to Lisa Chandler, please contact the Hunt County Sheriff's Department at 903-453-6800. If you'd like to remain anonymous, you can call Crime Stoppers at 903-457-2929.